Munching on his third energy bar of the morning, Oliver watched the monitor with his legs raised on his desk as lines and dots blipped across the map of Canada. Even after 7 years of doing the same job every day, he still wasn't used to the long and awful hours of calling potential clients. But the early mornings and late evenings were precisely when the money was to be made, when people were the most susceptible to his words. There was a ping in his ear, followed by a tired male voice. Hello?
Hello. This is an important message from the Canada Revenue Agency.
The line was disconnected. More of his calls had been ending quickly as of late. More people had been made weary of his tactics, but not enough to hinder his business. At least 3 in every 10 people who answered his call would be willing to believe what he was telling them. In the past year alone, he made almost $20 million just by calling strangers. He was his own boss, made his own hours, had good pay, and was able to talk to a lot of people every day. It was much better than any other traditional job he can think of. That is, if he wasn't forced to work for Alexander Bonello, the kingpin of a crime syndicate named the Lymphs. There was a loud knock on the door. It had been years since Oliver last entertained guests, so there was only one possible person behind the impatient pounding: Giulio Bonello. He halted the program with the push of a button and lazily made his way to the door. Peeking through the peephole, he just managed to make out a man's silhouette when a fist suddenly struck him, causing him to flinch. Sighing, he unlocked each of the 3 deadbolts and twisted the doorknob. The door was pushed in violently as a scrawny young man in an expensive blazer, white t-shirt, and black jeans strode into his apartment nonchalantly.
Come on in?
You being sarcastic?
Of course not.
Oliver walked past him into the kitchenette and pulled a can of ginger ale out of the fridge. He turned to see a dirty pale finger in his face.
Don't forget that we own you. Whenever you see me, you gotta roll out that red carpet, man.
His breath reeked of halitosis. One would think being crazy rich would mean being able to afford a toothbrush, but clearly, the only thing he'd been brushing his teeth with was his crack pipe.
Well, I can't afford carpet, but I do have a drink.
Oliver offered the soft drink in his hand. The man sighed.
You call this a drink?
He snatched the can out of his hand and slurped.
You should be grateful you even have a roof over your head. My old man was generous enough as it is to let you work for us.
Opening a can of his own, Oliver sat back down in his chair and resumed the program.
Sure.
Giulio's hand suddenly gripped his shoulder and spun him around forcefully in his swivel chair.
Say that again, with more gratitude.
Sure. Sir.
Oliver gritted his teeth. He hated people touching him, and Giulio knew it. His arm twitched, and he wanted nothing more than to slug him in the face. But he knew Giulio had all the power in that relationship. He knew that if he gave in to his baser instincts, his life would end. Giulio paused and released his shoulder.
Not exactly what I was looking for, but I don't care enough to push an awkward shut-in to thank me.
Stressed out again?
Oh, as if you care.
I really don't, but you're ruining the vibe.
You know, I just don't get it. I just bought these huge mansions in the suburbs. Nice quiet place. We can do all kinds of things in them. Games, drugs, booze, girls. We wouldn't be caught because the police are idiots and spend all their time in the ghettos. Pops thinks it's too risky because it's too close to the dyads. But that's even more reason why we should be there, to keep the border in check.
Don't the dyads and the lymphs have an agreement to stay out of each other's businesses? Isn't it best not to rock the boat by encroaching on their turf?
No. Their turf. It's our turf. They could be in it right now, we wouldn't know, because we ain't there. If I was in charge, I'd build a wall and make them pay for it.
Have you tried asking for more responsibilities?
Yeah, but he keeps blowing me off. Got him $30 billion this year, got rid of the lying pigs, dealt with the traitors, but still not enough. Damn old man won't even look my way unless I make a gang of my own.
Oliver continued looking at the screen as he let Giulio's complaints go in one ear and out the other. This was his life. Swindling people for money on behalf of a crime lord and listening to the rantings of a spoiled brat. The only thing keeping him alive was his ability to talk.
Doesn't feel good for your accomplishments to go unrecognized, huh?
No, the old fart doesn't appreciate me, and his grandpa advisor says senile.
What if you try reaching out to more people? Surely he'll pay attention if you have your own people backing you up.
Before he knew it, Oliver was playing the same games as he played during the student council elections back in high school, raising doubt in the opponent and egging people on. He never once thought that Giulio would succeed in standing up to his father. But if he could make it look like he's revolting, well, there was a swift slap on the back of his head.
Hey, you suggesting I turn on him?
No.
Oliver replied while flinching away.
Of course not. I'm just saying maybe you might benefit from having more people other than me to listen to your frustrations.
There was a moment of silence as Julio's beady brown eyes stared into his own. Was he going to hit him again?
I ain't talking to just anyone,
Julio said into his ear, the smell of his disgusting cologne singeing his nose hairs.
I'm not like you, a phone whore.
Oliver continued looking at Julio, waiting for him to get to the point. There would have been a time when he was younger that he would retaliate in kind, spewing all kinds of creative insults. But over the years, his resistance and verve have been all but snuffed out. The only thing that remained was his job.
Anyway, you're really the only one that I trust since I have you on such a short leash. I mean, who else you gonna blab to?
Well, I do talk to hundreds of people every day.
A cool metallic blade suddenly pressed against his throat.
If I ever do find out that you betrayed me, I'll carve a second mouth in your throat.
Oliver handed a check to Julio, who snatched it out of his hand.
100 grand? That's it?
Oliver nodded his head defeatedly.
Looks like you better get more creative quick. You know what'll happen if you don't.
Julio crumpled up his can of ginger ale and tossed it onto the floor in the kitchenette and left the apartment. Oliver sat in silence as he attempted to wrap his head around the fact that he needed to find a way to make more money. This was his life, and he made peace with that, even if it meant a shorter one should he fail to deliver. Yawning as he got up and headed to the kitchenette, he picked up the crumpled can and held it under the tap to rinse off. His life may have been under the control of someone else, but at least he was in control of what bugs entered his apartment. The last thing he needed was an army of ants who probably ate better than he did. Not probably. Certainly. The can overflowed with foaming water and fizzing ginger ale.
That spoiled bastard couldn't even finish a simple drink. Man, I got this on sale too.
He emptied the can and simply stood there, listening to his breathing. He felt a swelling of emotions in his stomach, causing his breathing to falter. He smashed the can against the sink, causing water to splash back up at his face. His eyes were shut tight. His teeth were gritted, and his lips and nostrils flared. He wanted to shout, but he knew it was his own fault for being put in this situation in the first place. He gripped the can tighter, the jagged edges digging into his palm. Even as streams of crimson trickled down his hand, the pain was incomparable to the mental turmoil he was experiencing. Since childhood, the people around him always made unsolicited comments on what he could be when he grew up, especially his mother. Because he talked so much, he always received suggestions for careers where people were forced to listen to him over a long period of time, such as dentistry or hairdressing. For the majority of his adolescence, he took these comments to heart, taking any opportunity at all to speak his mind. He was so concerned with having something to say that he never stopped to consider whether people wanted to listen. Eventually, his small circle of friends disappeared as they moved on from high school to chase their dreams, while he remained stagnant and undecided as to what to do with his life. Back then, though it pained him to do so, he enrolled himself in a communications program at the local university to keep busy while he contemplated his options. It was an expensive pastime, and although he achieved stellar grades, he found it increasingly difficult to reconcile the education he was receiving with the number of expenses he had to pay in the form of tuition and bills. The pressure to be independent grew as time went by. His mother never approved of his choice in majors, and thus would get into several heated arguments daily, to the point where he needed to go out late at night just to feel normal. Night after night, party after party, Oliver continued to go out simply to relieve stress and to avoid talking to his mother. But eventually, he required a stronger alternative to numb the feeling of shame and disappointment. That was when he met Julio. At the time, Julio was a charismatic student who appeared to be the life of every party. Always ready to enjoy life, try new things, and more importantly, have access to high-grade cocaine. One night, Oliver's parents stayed up late awaiting his return. When they saw that he was still coming off of his high, they had their worst fight yet, and inevitably, their last. He stormed back out into the street, Determined more than ever to take his chances on his own, his father chased after him and was hit by a bus. Even at the funeral, Oliver refused to speak a single word to his mother, whom he blamed for his death. His father was never a decisive man, so he was certain that he was ordered by his mother to chase after him that night. Even if it was his own decision to run after Oliver, why didn't she tell him to stop? The day after the funeral, Oliver left home without a single word. That was when he picked up the phone, and his life changed forever. He plopped back down in his chair just as another ping sounded in his ear, followed by the voice of an elderly woman.
Hello?
Hello. This is an important message from the Canada Revenue Agency. Do not hang up.
Oh, okay.
Oliver's eyebrows perked up. It had been a while since someone got this far in the call. Most hang up after the mention of the CRA. He took a quick breath to recompose himself as he continued.
You are suspected of several counts of tax and identity fraud, and will be at risk of being incarcerated unless you follow these specific instructions in the next hour.
Oh no, I knew I wrote my church tax receipt in the wrong column.
Please listen carefully if you want your case dropped. There's still a chance to have it thrown out if you can prove your identity right now.
All right, I'm listening.
Oliver sat up straight in his chair with his hands on the keyboard. His eyes widened and his heart quickened.
Give me the 12 digits on the front of your credit card, as well as the expiry date and security code on the back. This is important to connect you to the correct bank account and prove where your money is.
Sure, just give me one moment. Oh no, where did I put it?
She said nervously as she rummaged through what sounded like a bag of plastic containers.
I'm sorry, it might take a minute. I've been meaning to clean out this old purse for a while now. You see, I've been on my own for several years, and it's difficult to do anything outside of work and meal prep. I probably don't need these receipts from the greasy gizzard.
Oliver's smile faded the longer he waited for his prize.
Ma'am, I must remind you that time is of the essence. The police are on their way as we speak.
Oh, gosh. Please tell them to wait. I've almost found it.
Unfortunately, I don't have the power to do that. They have already been dispatched.
Okay. Found it.
The old woman exclaimed as she recited the numbers on the card. Oliver's heart was pounding, as was his tendency whenever he realized that he was gonna get away with another person's credit card information. Julio said to be creative. Could he milk her for more?
Excellent, thank you. We're almost done here. As I said before, I can't stop the police, but what you can do is go to the nearest consumer's drug mart and purchase $1,000 worth of Boogle play cards.
If you can't stop them, shouldn't I just stay put and explain the situation with the police when they get here?
The idea is that we establish an alibi of where you were today. The person we have been following has been using your identity to commit various crimes at night. Therefore, he should be asleep during the day. If we can have a paper trail of where you were during the day, then we can rule you out.
Oh, that makes sense. Let me just get my purse and jacket. It's kind of chilly.
Ma'am, you're running out of time.
Right, I'm sorry. I'll just go like this. It's not that cold, and the store is relatively nearby. Should I hang up?
No, I'll stay on the line in case you have any questions.
Oliver waited and listened to the sounds of rustling fabric as the woman rushed out of her house and closed the door.
My husband used to wake up at the crack of dawn every morning just to buy coffee at Tom Harton's. He would come back, pour it discreetly in the coffee pot, and pretend that he brewed it himself with his own special coffee beans, all because I once said I liked men who could make a decent drink. Of course, I meant alcohol, but he was so pure, he thought I meant coffee. What other adult drinks are there, am I right?
The woman chuckled and continued to rant about her husband's other ridiculous antics, causing Oliver to rest his head on his hand.
He was an idiot. But he was my idiot. You know, for 20 years.
Where are you now? Are you almost there?
Shouldn't be long. I've been unlucky with all the red lights I'm getting.
Are you driving?
No, I'm on foot. Who can afford a car these days? It's a nice day today anyway. Spring has sprung, as they say. Unfortunately, it also applies to allergies. My son used to have terrible springtime allergies and would be afraid to leave the house.
Oliver looked around his room. It may not have been the most aesthetically pleasing, but at least it was clean and free of dust and pollen.
I can understand that. Do you think you could walk faster? Maybe jaywalk? You could be thrown in jail, you know.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. But I'm not sure I feel comfortable breaking the law to prove I wasn't breaking the law. Luckily, I've been power walking quite a bit, so it shouldn't be more than 5 minutes before I get there. Do you exercise?
Oliver looked at the dumbbells in the corner, placed atop a pile of files with sensitive information.
Yeah? I lift sometimes.
That's good. You sound young. Young men should stay fit or no one will take them seriously.
Ma'am, can we continue the rest of this excursion in silence? I have many other things I need to do and think about for your case.
My apologies. Yes, thank you so much for taking this seriously and helping me.
Oliver muted his microphone and groaned.
Oh, is this what it's like to talk to me?
Just as he switched tabs and started watching videos on WeTube, he heard a bell from the other end and indiscernible music. Unmuting his microphone, he said,
Are you there?
Yep, still safe and sound, and without jaywalking. Not that I could say the same about Barry. For 20 years, he thought he fooled me about the coffee. He was someone who was always in a rush too, jaywalking or cutting lines whenever he could.
Ma'am?
Oliver asked, genuinely concerned. She wasn't going to stroke out on him now, was she? Right when she was so close?
Hi, I'm sorry I'm still here. I just get a little teary-eyed whenever I talk about him. It's been a while since I've talked to anybody.
About him?
Sure.
Then let's focus on the task at hand. I'm sorry for your loss, but I imagine that Barry wouldn't be happy to know you've been arrested for tax fraud.
The words came out like clockwork. Sow doubt and anxiety. Add the pressure. Raise the stakes. There was a specific formula that he created and followed to the letter. But even as he effortlessly used her late husband's memory against her, he couldn't help but feel a slight tightness in his chest.
Let's work together. We're almost done.
The woman blew her nose.
Okay, where do I go next?
Go towards the cashier. If there's someone there, just smile and head towards the stand with the shiny black cards that say Boogle Play on them. And grab 5 of the $200 cards.
Alright.
Oliver listened intently as the woman rummaged through the rack of cards. What's taking so long? It should be right in front of her. It's shiny and sleek. It's designed to attract children. How could she miss it? Suddenly, he heard her whimpering, followed by a clatter of cards on the floor.
Oh no, you've done it again. How ridiculous is this? I can't even pick out the right card. Oh, Barry.
Ma'am, did you get the cards yet?
Almost, dear. It's just difficult because I left without my glasses.
Oliver cursed and slammed his forehead against the table. Perhaps this was evidence that his formula wasn't completely foolproof.
It's okay. Take your time. Just look for patterns of black and green.
Ma'am, do you need help?
Oliver's heart leapt into his mouth.
Ma'am, I need you to calm down. If that's a store employee, just tell them you slipped and are buying a gift for your grandson.
Okay. Oh, if only that was the case. It's okay, miss. I'm fine. I'm just buying a gift for my grandson. And clumsy me, I must have knocked these down.
That's okay. Here, let me help you pick these out. Was there a specific one you wanted?
Yes, the $20 ones.
$200.
Oh, sorry. I meant $200 ones.
That's quite a present for your grandson. Don't you think it's a bit much?
Tell her it's his
Honestly, it's the least I could do for him. He's the only one that comes to see me nowadays, and that's worth more than a few dollars.
Oliver was taken aback by her performance under pressure. She thought rather quickly for an old woman, but she reacted a bit too quickly. He hoped there wasn't any truth hidden in her words.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me scan and bag it for you.
No need, dear. They're just cards. I'll hold them.
Ma'am? Are you sure there's nothing else I can do for you? Is that your grandson on the phone?
Tell her yes.
I'm fine, thank you. Excuse me, I have a lot of errands to look after today.
The scanner beeped and the payment terminal buzzed.
Are you out of the store?
Yes, dear. Got all the cards with me here. Curious things. What can I use them for?
They're not yours. They technically belong to the CRA. We transferred $1,000 into your account to help catch the culprit. But if you fail to return the money within the next 30 minutes, we will disclose your location and you will be arrested and prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Oh my, no need to sell me on it. I'll do whatever you say. Please, I can't afford to be away from home now.
Good. Now, find a quiet place and scratch the silver coating off the back and read me the serial numbers.
After reciting the serial numbers, the old woman gave a sigh of relief.
Did I do it on time? Am I safe?
Clasping his hand over his mouth as he grinned from ear to ear, he pumped his fist repeatedly as he rejoiced at his latest winnings.
That's right, ma'am. The police have left your home and have been notified of your innocence for now. I may call you in the future with follow-up instructions, should the paperwork encounter any issues.
Thank you so much. I don't know how to repay you for all your hard work.
There's no need. Stay safe.
You too.
A week later, when business was slower than usual, Oliver went down the list of numbers he had successfully obtained information from. His eyes immediately fell on the old woman's number halfway down the extensive spreadsheet. He could almost feel himself drool at the thought of another lucrative transaction, even if it meant listening to her speak incessantly about her late husband. He dialed the number and waited eagerly, with his eyes glued to the monitor.
Hello?
Hello. This is Leo from Bulleshite Bank, calling regarding some suspicious behavior with the credit card ending in 2020.
Oliver said, finding it nearly impossible to retain his composure, knowing that he was the one that had been making regular transactions through the mobile phone game he had been playing, Late Food Order. Some considered those kinds of games an insidious form of gambling, but to him, it was a pleasant pastime to collect his favorite characters.
Oh dear, first my taxes, now my credit card?
Yes, ma'am. We believe the culprit may be part of a larger organization that preys on vulnerable people. Have you given your credit card information to anyone in the past week?
Only this nice young gentleman from the CRA last week. Actually, you sound kind of like him. Are you the same person?
Oliver nearly choked on a spit and quickly looked at the monitor to check to see if he had been running his voice changer application. When he saw that it wasn't running, he sighed and decided to commit to the role.
Yes, I'm surprised you remember me. Unfortunately, things have become quite serious, and your case might be involved in a large multinational criminal investigation. In fact, we may need your help to catch one of the perpetrators right now.
Oh yes, anything to stop these criminals. Thank you so much for helping me once again.
Don't mention it,
Oliver said with a smug grin.
Unfortunately, time is of the essence yet again. There is a transaction at the local consumer's drug mart that is currently underway. If you go now, you may be able to catch them.
Right away. I'm going to catch those no-good lowlifes.
Don't forget your glasses and coat this time. It's chilly and you need to be at top physical form to stop them.
That's so considerate of you. Now that I think about it, I don't think I'm in any condition to physically stop anybody. Maybe we should let the police handle it.
No. We need evidence first before they can move. Due to some red tape, they can't press charges without your help to incriminate them. Also, I don't expect you to physically confront them, but with your help, we'll be able to flush them out.
As expected, the old woman immediately began telling stories of Barry and her son, who apparently had not been back to see her in years. Not that Oliver was paying any attention. He knew that she was power walking as fast as she could, so he took the opportunity to catch up on some riveting dramas he had been meaning to watch, even if it was only for 5 minutes. Just like last time, she went into the store and was instructed to purchase more Boogle play cards, this time totaling about $2,000. She then scratched the backs of the cards and recited the serial numbers to him over the phone.
These Boogle play cards are quite valuable, aren't they? What are they for?
They're a new form of online currency that those on the black market use to deal in contraband. We're hoping that you purchasing these cards will cause the criminals to slip and reveal themselves. Fortunately, the police in your vicinity have notified me that the suspect has been apprehended and brought down to the station. Thank you for your cooperation.
They have? Oh, thank goodness. Thank you so much for your help once again, Leo. Speaking of which, I didn't get reimbursed for the Boogle Play cards I bought last week. When will I be receiving that money?
It usually takes 10 to 20 business days for the money to be transferred and processed, so rest assured it will come.
Understood. Oh, I don't know how I can repay you. You've been so understanding. I would like to treat you to a nice home-cooked meal, if you don't mind, that is.
Oliver's eyes widened.
Ma'am, I'm a government agent. It wouldn't be seemly of me to be taking what could be deemed by others as a bribe.
No, this is just a friendly dinner of gratitude because I'm just so overjoyed that I helped our criminal justice system take another baddie off the streets. But I understand if you're busy. Young people need to live their lives as well. It's just been a while since I've had company over for dinner.
Oliver looked at his kitchenette, attempting to recall what he had in the fridge. A head of cabbage, 3 packs of instant noodles, 3 eggs, and maybe some leftover chicken parmesan from 2 nights ago. He knew the rules. He made them. Meeting a mark in person was an absolute no-no. But this was also the first time someone had offered to make him dinner. Would this be considered another transaction? He could benefit from a warm home-cooked meal. It would save on groceries for one night. Besides, it seemed like she needed the company. Oliver groaned. Why was he even considering the idea? Julio said to be creative, not stupid, right?
Anyway, have a good week.
Before he knew it, Oliver belted out.
Wait!
He drew a deep breath. His stomach grumbled, and he looked at the wastepaper basket next to his desk, filled to the brim with energy bar wrappers. For a brief instant, a wave of pity washed over him.
What kind of food can you make?
Oh, I can make all kinds of things, but shabu-shabu pork is my specialty. If you're interested in some hot pot, I use my own seasonings, so it's much fresher than what you find in those restaurants out there. And cheaper. Or if you don't eat pork, I can also make a mean curry oxtail.
Oliver could nearly taste the meat and spices in his mouth. It was only one night, so what did he have to lose? How much of a threat could one old lady be?
Okay. I'll make an exception just this one time. How does tomorrow at 7 sound?
Perfect. You have my address, right?
I do, but perhaps you could confirm it for me.
Sure, it's 44 Belladonna Street, postal code I4I3Y3, Unit 46A.
Oliver got up from his seat, pulled back the curtain slightly, and peeked out the window. I knew the general area, but who knew she would be across the street this whole time?
Got it. Thank you. See you then.
In a way, Oliver was grateful she was so close by. It made it easier for him to canvass the area and look out for suspicious people and vehicles like unmarked police cruisers. After hours of watching the ins and outs of the apartment building across the street, he felt relatively confident that it was safe to travel to. The building had 3 exits should he have to make a quick escape, not to mention 4 busy streets that divided into several more alleys he was more than familiar with. As an extra precaution, he took several detours around the neighborhood, resulting in him being 30 minutes late. He buzzed the intercom.
Hello?
Hi, it's me, Leo.
Oh, I thought you might have forgotten. Good, come on in.
The door unlocked and he made his way down the tight, dusty corridor. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and other musty odors. Indiscernible noises and yelling intermittently broke the silence from behind the doors of various apartments. The building was mismanaged, but he knew he was in no place to judge. His apartment building was nothing to look at either, but at least he was able to breathe. He reached the end of the hall to Unit 46A. His hand hovered over the beige door.
I can't believe I'm doing this.
Suddenly, he noticed a familiar and pleasant smell of cumin and other herbs wafting through the door.
Well, I came this far.
He barely knocked a second time when the door swung open. His heart stopped. In the doorway stood the old woman with long silver hair tied in a ponytail, wrinkled eye bags, deep crow's feet, and a burn mark on her sunken right cheek. She was thin, so much so that he was afraid he would knock her over just by breathing. She stood about a head shorter than him and looked up longingly with her familiar dark brown eyes. Despite the obvious signs of aging, tired voice, and what were scars from a hard life, there was no doubt in his mind that that woman was his mother. The plate in her hand fell to the floor and shattered as she too came to the same realization.
Oh, Ollie?
At a complete loss for words, Oliver's face flushed red. He wanted to run, but his feet were planted to the ground. His first instinct was to deny his name, the name his mother had given him. A swelling of emotion seethed and surged as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. He had abandoned her for nearly 7 years, and to now suddenly show up on her doorstep looking for a free meal? What possible reaction could he have? His mother reached out. The sudden warmth from a wrinkled hand holding his own shocked him. The fear of being discovered, the shame of abandoning his mother, the guilt from his lifestyle, the self-pity he suppressed all these years, and even his disdain towards her were all overshadowed by an immense relief to see his mother again. Tears welled up in his eyes, his body grew cold, and his breathing wavered.
Ma.
She stepped forward and swiftly embraced him, the warmth penetrating his body and into his soul. Her familiar scent filled his nostrils. She still used the same creamy shampoo. There was no doubt in his mind that this was his mother, and all he wanted to do was hug her back. But he didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve to be treated with compassion after everything he had done.
Hush, come on in. I've been waiting.
The next few moments went by in a blur, and the next thing he knew, he was already seated at a small candlelit dining table for two in the middle of a dilapidated apartment. Picture frames hung haphazardly on the walls. There were stains in the carpet, and the sofa had clearly seen better days. Despite all this, it was obvious she had attempted to do some sort of cleaning before he arrived, but she could only move what was near the ground. Spider webs hung from the ceiling, predominantly in the corner near the dead plants in the window, and the light from the lampstand flickered. Laid out before him was a glistening plate of golden curry oxtail and a bubbling hot pot filled to the brim with various vegetables and meats that he loved but couldn't afford.
So you're the Leo on the phone. I'm glad it was you that helped me then. Here, eat up. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in years.
But
No buts, mister.
He stared at the food in front of him and nodded abruptly. Without thinking, he scarfed down the exquisite meal, the heat from the spices and rice warming him from the inside out. Beads of sweat trickled down his face, mixing with the tears from his suppressed sobs. What right did he have to eat such a good meal? What did he do to deserve this punishment? Even being thrown in jail would have been a more tolerable experience than this.
After all these years, you're still a messy eater.
His mother pulled out a tissue and began dabbing the sweat from his forehead. Oliver reached out and took the tissue by instinct and blew his nose.
You always did want to do everything yourself. Although, this is the first time I've seen you eat without talking.
When they finished the oxtail, she continually served him, moving various items from the steaming hot pot directly into his plate. Every time he was about to clear his plate, more food miraculously appeared before he could get up and take some for himself. He looked up at her plate. The steam from her food had already disappeared, and it never looked more than half full.
thank you. Take some for yourself, I'll be fine.
Oliver said as he got up and reached for the tongs.
Oh, don't worry about me. I tend not to eat too much, so you go ahead and eat what you can.
When his stomach was about full, Oliver finally found the courage to talk.
So, how long have you been living here?
About 7 years.
7 years, that's...
How long you were gone. Yes, I know. With both you and Barry gone, it was difficult to continue living in such an expensive neighborhood. The property tax alone was enough to bankrupt me, so I moved.
Oliver felt his grip around his fork loosen as his eyes drifted down. She said alone. Did she have no one else who could help her?
What happened to your cheek?
This old thing? It's a burn mark from when I was a chef at the Shabu Shabu restaurant. Before it closed down, that is.
I love that place. I didn't know you were cooking there.
Of course. Why do you think the Shabu Shabu special was so good? Although I'm not surprised you didn't notice the chefs. Most people go to see the peppy servers.
Feeling his face flush again, Oliver turned back to his food and picked at the pork, for he was one of the people guilty of returning just to see one specific server and may have tipped more than he should have.
Wait, weren't the staff poisoned one night?
I was fortunate enough to have been in the hospital for this very burn, so I had to miss the dinner. I still remember feeling so bad for missing it, but I do remember receiving a sweet phone call from the new manager. Who would have thought she was a murderer?
The two chuckled. She continued to update him with her life, talking about all the odd jobs she had to do to stay afloat. custodial jobs, babysitting, grocery store cashier, and even sewing at a sweatshop. She barely had 5 hours of sleep between jobs because life was so expensive. The longer he listened, the more his guilt became unbearable.
Mom, you need to be more careful.
I know. That's why I use a pot lid as a shield now. You should see me trying to cook nowadays. It's like I'm fighting a dragon.
Oliver could barely bring himself to smile.
I meant with your information.
Oh, you mean like giving the CRA my credit card information?
Oliver looked up at her, flabbergasted.
You knew? Then why didn't you stop?
She got up and began stacking the empty plates.
I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. I suppose I just wanted the company.
Just as he felt his eyes start to heat up, he jumped to his feet and swiped the plates from his mother's hands and placed them in the sink.
Oh, you don't have to do that. You're my guest tonight.
No, you cook, so I clean.
After he had finished the dishes and pots, he went on to dust the ceiling and vacuum the carpet. He couldn't stop cleaning. His conscience wouldn't let him. It was the least he could do after everything he's done to her.
Dear, thank you so much.
Please, don't thank me.
But I have to.
You don't have to do anything. I'm sorry.
It's okay, dear.
It really isn't. It's because of me that you live like this. Instead of being there for you, you have no idea what I've been doing.
I have an idea.
She smiled.
But it's okay because you're back now, and that's what matters. No matter what you did, I know it wasn't entirely your fault. You got involved with some bad people. It happens.
How do you know who I'm involved with?
A kind boy like you wouldn't run away from their mother for no reason. It also doesn't take much to realize who's really behind the scam calls. But regardless of what happened, your kindness is what brought you to my door tonight, and that makes me happy as a mother.
More than 7 years of keeping his composure shattered in an instant. Oliver bellowed as he held his mother in a tight embrace. She felt so thin, as though he were hugging a bag of bones. One wrong move and he could have broken the rest of her brittle body. The grief was overwhelming. 7 wasted years working under the thumb of evil people, while his mother had to suffer and struggle alone. And despite her hardships, still welcomed him back with open arms. His last fight with her was all he could think about since he left. A few times he considered apologizing, but his pride got in the way. Even now, he had the opportunity to make things right, but all he could do was sob. How could he consider himself a man after doing so many cowardly things? How could she bring herself to still call him her son? He didn't deserve anything good in his life, least of all a simple hug from his mother. But there he was, selfishly indulging in his needs once again, while she stroked his back like she used to when he had trouble sleeping as a child. He felt his body being laid onto something soft. A familiar smell of detergent was the last thing to greet his senses as the night and his consciousness faded away. When Oliver awoke, he found himself in a blue bedroom similar to his childhood room, save for any appliances. He spent the next few minutes looking around at the familiar furniture.
There's no way. Is it the same?
His eyes scanned the small white desk in the corner, and surely enough, along the legs were the markings he made with his initials and the stickers from his favorite cartoons. His mother had kept most of the furniture in his old room, and even some of the clothes in the closet. Was she waiting for him all these years? He removed his old school jacket from one of the hooks and held it to his nose. It still faintly smelled like him, but there was an additional scent. The creamy scent of his mother's shampoo. She must have been in there regularly to reminisce as he was. Oliver drew a sharp breath in an attempt to steady his breathing. The last 12 hours had been an emotional roller coaster. What was he supposed to do now? He slowly peeked through the door and was relieved to see that the living room was empty. He snuck out and quietly opened the room next door to see his mother sound asleep in bed. Even the air that flooded out of the door was somehow nostalgic as he recognized it to be 100% his mother's scent. He made his way to the kitchen and turned on the stove. He may not know what to do with his life, but he knew what he was going to do that morning, and that was to return the favor by making an omelet breakfast for the two of them. It wasn't anything special, but it was the least he could do. It was about 10 in the morning when Oliver finally picked up the nerve to knock on her door.
Mom?
When there was no answer, he slowly opened the door and entered.
Mom, I'm coming in.
She was still tucked in her bed, with the fan pointing at her face. Perhaps she couldn't hear him. He turned off the fan and sat on the edge of her bed.
Good morning, Mom. I made breakfast.
Still no response.
Hey.
He gently patted her shoulder and parted the hair from her face, his fingers accidentally touching her forehead. Her skin was cold to the touch. He quickly moved his fingers to her neck. When he failed to palpate anything, he placed his face near her nose. She wasn't breathing.
Mom!
He yelled as he pulled down the covers and shook her shoulders. His hands never moved so quickly in his life as he shot into his pocket to retrieve his phone. After calling for the EMTs, he began performing CPR with the guidance of the emergency dispatcher. He didn't care how long her heart may have stopped for, he just needed her back. After 7 long years, they had finally been reunited. He needed her back to make up for lost time. He needed her back for him to care for her. He needed her back to make amends.
Wake up, Mom!
Even as his arms gave way from exhaustion, he continued to press her chest with his full body weight. If he couldn't use his arms, the least he could do was use his head. It was all that it was good for a useless son like him. He rammed his shoulder and head against her chest, knowing full well that it was futile. When the EMTs arrived, they told him that there was still heart activity and whisked her away on a stretcher. He collapsed in the corner as the room began to spin. The police came soon after to take his statement, just to confirm that no foul play was involved. However, when he was unable to speak, Officer Janet simply left him her card and told him she would be back the next day. He wailed and slammed his head against the wall, cursing himself for being weak and selfish until he went numb. He sat in the corner for hours, staring at the empty bed. As he pulled himself up, he noticed a folded piece of paper on the bed. He unfolded it. It was a letter addressed to him, dated 2 years back.
Dear Ollie, if you're reading this, I've probably gone on to a better place. I'm sorry I wasn't able to wait for you longer. The doctor just told me today that I have a metastatic pancreatic cancer and gave me 2 more years to live. He said it was a blessing in disguise that I got burned because otherwise they wouldn't have run all those tests and discovered it. I asked about treatment and he said that even chemotherapy wouldn't help slow the spread, but I insisted on it, even if it meant living just a little bit longer for a chance to see you again. I'd do it. I know you're out there trying to make a name for yourself, trying to make a living, so I have been too. I've saved up every penny I could, even if it meant living in a place like this, so that one day you can come back home and see that nothing has changed, so that we can start over again. You're going to need it if you want to go back to school, after all. I tried to make the guest room look as much as your old room as possible, but unfortunately I can only do so much with the space I was given. Oh, how I miss you. I still go in every now and then just to hold your clothes. I wonder now, did you ever develop a palate for Tom Harton's coffee like your dad did? Something tells me you're more refined than that. Perhaps you learned to appreciate a real adult drink like a piña colada. Is there a special girl in your life? Have you found a job you like doing? I still regret how we left things. I never enjoyed arguing with you. It's just that I only want the best for you. I know you blame me for Barry's death. I blamed you for several years too. But spending all this time alone made me realize that family is all we have. I don't blame you for your father's death anymore. If I could take back the things I said, I would. Perhaps if I took my own advice and listened more, I would have understood your feelings. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just know that I will always love you, and I will always be proud of you, now and forever. Yours truly, Mom.
At the bottom of the page was a message written in darker ink than the rest of the letter, written in the same beautiful script.
P.S. I'm writing this after laying you in your own bed. Though it might surprise you, I still have a bit of mileage in these arms yet. Now, I'm not sure if you remember, given all the blubbering you were doing, but I just want to say again how truly happy it makes me that we finally found our way back together again. I know you feel guilty and you're probably full of regrets, but you still have the rest of your life to live. When God finally calls me back to Him, I want you to promise me that you'll live on with your chin held high. Use the money I saved for you in the safe underneath your bed. Use it to rebuild your life. I know you'll be able to make something of yourself. You have my brains after all, and your father's compassion. Live on. Also, I just realized that I never wrote down the combination, but I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out.
Tears flooding down his cheeks, he silently sobbed as he went back into his room and moved his bed. He removed the false flooring to find a charcoal-colored safe. He pondered for a moment as to what the combination could be.
No, couldn't be.
He spun the dial to the digits of his birthday. When the tumblers clicked and the door opened, he sighed exasperatedly.
Mom, really? That was too easy. If anyone else...
He was left speechless as he stared at the contents of the safe. Stacks upon stacks of $100 bills were packed inside. 7 years. 7 entire years they both had suffered with no one else to talk to. So lonely was his mother that she clung onto a phone call with the scammer to form some kind of relationship to fill the void of her absent son and late husband. For 7 years, she held out hope that she would see him again, and when she did, all he had to show for his absence were his years of experience as a small-time swindler. He bit into his hand. All the pain he could inflict on himself wouldn't be enough to atone for his sins. His mind wandered to what could have been if he had simply stayed and told the truth. If he had simply listened calmly, instead of charging headfirst into bad deals, none of this would have happened. At the end of the day, he was the one who was scammed. His eyes sharpened. His impulsive behavior and his silver tongue were what got him into this mess, and it would be how he would get himself out. 7 years were stolen from them, and he could never get it back. He blamed himself for 7 years for what he lost, but at the source of all this grief was one person, Alexander Bonello. If he couldn't get back the time lost, then the least he could do was take back some of Alexander's and his son's. He pulled out his phone and took a quick picture of the safe before locking it again. He ran back home and began making preparations. The first call he needed to make was to Giulio. He was the key to his plan. The man-child was quick to act when goaded, and his ego was fragile. It was no wonder that his father never trusted him with more. He texted him a picture of the safe and called him from a blocked number. He triple-checked that his voice changer was on before Giulio picked up.
Who the hell's this?
I'm assuming you received my text.
How'd you get this number? Who are...
Calm down, brat. I work for Marciliano.
the Dyads? What do you lot want with me?
We couldn't give a shit about you. We've been trying to get a hold of your father about this real estate deal we had in the works for months now. One that would benefit both of us. Tell him we have the payment ready. The money in the picture is just a down payment, but we need your father's information to wire the rest to him.
What kind of information?
As per our deal, he was supposed to give us this information to all his accounts so we can wire our cash to him without raising suspicion.
What deal?
You screwing with me, brat? I just said, biggest deal of the century is about to go down and you don't know? Are you seriously gonna screw this up because you can't handle a simple cash transfer?
No, of course I know. I'm just testing you to see if you were who you say.
Right. Do you have the information or not? The deadline is in 30 minutes, and if we don't get it, say goodbye to that border.
Order? Alright, yeah, give me a minute. Do you want me to just text it to you?
You're doing a really good job of pulling my leg to pretending to be an amateur. Because you know what will happen if you're screwing with me, and it ain't pretty.
That's why I'm the life of the party.
Can you hurry up and check your email?
Oliver double-clicked the program on his desktop, opening up several command prompts prepared to track Giulio's phone.
Transfer all data?
That's right. You've done this before, haven't you?
Look here. I'm the son of Alexander Bonello. Whatever deal you have with him, you better start showing me some respect or I'll come and gun you down myself.
Oh-ho! The cojones on this bastard. Fine by me, but you'll have to explain to your pops how you messed up the deal he's been working on.
Alright, but how do I know this is safe?
You don't. Whatever you decide to do, you better do it quick, because unless this deal is made on time, the RCMP will close in on your east warehouses and find a ton of crack. They're moving towards them as we speak, but if you're quick enough, my men are ready to move them out before they even get there. Tick-tock, small balls.
Okay, old man, I'll do it, you son of a bitch.
A ping sounded in Oliver's ear, and windows of data streamed across the screen. He had to mute his mic as he laughed incessantly at his success.
Did you get the information?
Yes. You just saved your family, small balls. We'll text you the address of the extra cash once we've been led into the new properties.
Oliver sifted quickly through the information he retrieved from Julio's phone, which was, unsurprisingly, filled with pornographic images. It was no wonder he was so hesitant in giving the dyads access to his phone. Eventually, his algorithm in his software was allowed to work, generating lists of phone numbers and addresses of all their contacts and encrypted emails alluding to various illicit activities, including a major drug deal that was currently underway at the docks. Saving all the information into a compressed file, he dialed Officer Janet's number and sent her the information, including Julio's last known location based on his phone's GPS. He went to his fridge and retrieved a can of ginger ale as he anxiously awaited Officer Janet's call. He paced around his apartment for an hour until he got a notification on his phone from the local news network. Alexander Bonello, the kingpin of the Limps, has been arrested red-handed in the middle of a drug deal with the dyads. 70 tons of high-grade cocaine have been confiscated. Breathing a sigh of relief, Oliver called the hospital. Fortunately, he was able to catch the overseeing doctor before he left the unit. "You're her son? I'm glad you called then. I'm going to be honest with you. She's already lived a lot longer than I thought she would. She was expected to go any day now, but it seems like she's still hanging on by some miracle. We've stabilized her for now, despite all the broken ribs, but not even I know what will happen. How quickly can you get here?" the doctor asked.
I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't let her die, Doc.
Oliver walked briskly to the door, anxious to see his mother at the hospital and celebrate his freedom. As he swung open the door, he was caught off guard by the sight of Julio standing in his way with a gun pointed at his face.
Oh, Julio. What brings you here? Stop messing around. You could poke someone's eye out with that.
Julio dragged his thumb across the back of the gun, removing what could only have been the safety pin.
Of course it was you. Can't believe I fell for your shitty scams twice. Twice! I warned you what would happen if you were to screw me over. Here comes that second mouth.
Freeze!
Behind Julio appeared Officer Janet, who pointed her own pistol at him.
I knew something was wrong when I didn't see a son at the docks.
Put your gun down, pig.
Julio said as he turned to aim his gun at Officer Janet.
Do you know who I am?
Don't you watch the news? You jailbait now, honey.
My father owns the courts and the police will ruin your life.
With what assets? Everything your family has ever owned now belongs to the province.
What?
That's right. You know, one must really be careful before giving out sensitive information.
Julio swung his arm, aiming his gun back at Oliver.
You mother...
A deafening bang rang out and a mist of red sprayed out from Julio's forehead, covering Oliver in his blood before falling to the ground with a thud.
Oops. Sorry about that. Are you okay?
No. Can you drive me to the hospital, please?
It was his first time riding inside a police cruiser, and despite how terrifying her driving skills were, his fear of death was overshadowed by the fear of not being able to make it on time.
Please, Mom. Please just last a little bit longer. I feel you hanging in there for me, so just wait, okay?
The blaring sirens ceased, and he bounded up the steps. One look at the elevator bay was enough to tell him that he couldn't waste time waiting for them. He leapt up the stairs, heart pounding and heaving for breath as he struggled to climb 7 flights of stairs. Yet another punishment suited for an ungrateful child unwilling to listen to his parents. She did warn him to stay active, and this was the result. Swinging the door open, he sprinted down the hall to his mother's room. There was a crowd of people surrounding her bed, half of whom solemnly exited as he entered and stared at her intubated and motionless body.
Mom?
He made eye contact with the doctor, who shook his head and said, "I'm sorry. We did all we could." His eyes darted to the monitors. The alarms were silenced and all the lines were flat. The respiratory therapist stood by the ventilator and offered his sympathies.
Mom!
For those of you who made it past the credits, thank you for listening to the story. With everyone being at home these days and with the Christmas holidays just around the corner, phones are going off the hook with calls from people like Oliver the scammer, who try to trick you into giving them your personal information, such as credit card numbers, social insurance numbers, names, and addresses. People like Oliver will often try to pressure you into thinking that you need to follow their instructions with their aggressive tones. But just remember that no one can force you to give your personal information over the phone. Slow down, think twice, and if you don't know the number, just don't pick up. Please be vigilant and careful with whom you share your personal information with. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with your friends and family so they won't be deceived. And don't forget to click that like button and subscribe. It goes a long way to help the channel grow and I'd really appreciate it. Also, let me know down in the comments if you've had any experience with scam callers. The more awareness there is, the safer we'll be. I'll catch you back here next Thursday. Peace!